New rule that's about to come up in 2023 that quite a bit of people has been talking about.
What do we say? Buyers are liars and sellers are too,
right?
Yeah. Based on how this is written, our discussion today, it doesn't really feel to me as if this is protecting anyone.
I completely agree. So with this new rule as it stands right now, I really feel like the only thing that will change is how multiple offer situation gets treated. Detrimental to your offer. Right? Because the seller will feel extremely insecure. You can always say, oh, I can give it to you the next day.
Yeah.
But come on, those are just words.
Of course.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for finding us on your favorite podcast app and or YouTube. My name is Joe Lee with Faith Wilson, Christie's International Real Estate.
And my name is Jeff Chan, also licensed with Faith Wilson, Christie's International Real Estate.
And starting from today, we're also known as the Mike for Vancouver Real Estate.
Hey, Joe.
Jeff. Oh my God. Jeff, how's your week?
It's good. I mean, I just had to comment. You look very professional today. I feel a little dressed down. My week was good. Our basketball team, our co-ed team, we won the championship last week. So pretty happy about that. It was a lot of fun. But what about you?
Man, every time you talk about your basketball league, honestly, I feel so out of shape.
No,
that's why you're so buff, right?
Not at all.
No, my weekend was good. Lots of work. Actually did quite a bit of work. I don't know, it just seems like my buyers are slowly to come back, which is great, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously just ate a lot. That's pretty much it. Your de-stress is basketball, my de-stress is eat. But anyways, as per usual, today, third podcast, third week, we are gonna talk about new rule that's about to come up in 2023 that quite a bit of people has been talking about, which is the mandatory cooling off period, right? We felt like this is a good topic to talk about right now because last week I think the real estate board actually had a huge panel and then they were just kind of talking about some of the fine details now, because they have started to slowly come out, and I just thought that it would be a good idea for us to pass this to our listeners, and so they kind of know what to expect in 2023. You get started, let people know kind of in a simplistic form about what is this cooling off period, and then what we'll do is we'll move into kind of the finer details, and then we'll obviously end with some of our thoughts here.
100%. Yeah. Now, I apologize in advance. If I sound confused throughout this podcast, it's because I am 100% confused about the details of how this is supposed to work, and we're going to do a deep dive, and we'll share our knowledge to the best of our ability. But basically, like Joe said, back in March, the government started to talk about this cooling off period due to the market where so many homes are being sold subject free.
That's right.
But then problems started to arise. So this point was to introduce, try to protect the consumer from unreasonable risk. And there's a reason why I air quoted that. When we mean by subject free offers, it means that, they're not even doing an inspection. And Joe and I have another podcast where we do a deep dive on inspections and why we think inspections are one of the most important steps in the buying process. So please go check that out on our page.
That's right.
If you're curious about inspections and want to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, check out those podcasts. There's a reason why that was our first episode as well, right? Simple put, 3 sentences. What can you tell us about this cooling off period?
Number 1, should you write a contract of purchase and sale, the first 3 days are considered the cooling off period, regardless if you have a subject or not.
Yeah.
Number 2, if a buyer decides to rescind from the deal, they will have to pay 0.25% of the agreed sales price. As a reference, a $1 million home will be a penalty of a $2,500 fine.
Correct.
Let's call this a break fee.
That's right.
And number 3, as it is currently written, this cooling off period cannot be waived. It sounds simple enough, right?
Yeah, I mean, the overall concept is very easy to understand. And just by the way you put it, I see the point where the government is going with this, right? But what we'll do is that right now we'll break into the small details about the fine prints and stuff like that. And then you'll see why we're kind of confused or foreshadowing, a little bit, not sure what's going on. So I'm gonna really break down those 3 things that you said, one by one. Okay. Let's start off with the 3 days.
Yeah.
Now the fine print has come out that this 3 days is gonna be 3 business days. Now that's a quick reminder for a lot of people. 3 business days means that there is no Saturdays, Sundays doesn't count, and holidays doesn't count.
Right? We work all of those.
For realtors, we don't have days off, you know what I mean, right? And the second thing about the 3 days is that the 3 days will start the day after the contract has been accepted. Okay? Not that day, the day after. All right. And number 3 is the 3 days will also go concurrently with any subject that you put into the contract. All right. Because you said regardless if the subject or not, everybody gets subject to this cooling off period. All right. Now, some of the quick things I just want to discuss is, I guess, the problems that we see is the 3 business days. I'll give you a perfect example. Let's say that you're the seller, I'm the buyer. All right. On Friday, we finally came to a deal. Right? And let's just say it's Labor Day long weekend because it's just coming right up.
Yeah.
Right? So we have an accepted offer on Friday. Saturday doesn't count. Sunday doesn't count. Monday is Labor Day weekend. So our first day is actually Tuesday, and then obviously Wednesday and then Thursday. So remember, we wrote and we accepted offer is on a Friday, but our cooling off period doesn't stop until the end of the day Thursday. So you can see how this 3 days automatically just turned into 6 days. It's almost like pre-sale when people get a 7-day rescission period, right? The concurrent thing is also, the second thing I want to talk about is concurrent thing is also kind of interesting. Because let's say that we roll a contract and then the day after immediately, I send it to my banker. And then my banker goes, hey, Joe, unfortunately, you can't afford this. We can't give you the full amount that you want, okay? Now, as a buyer, how am I going to bring that out to you? Because you got to understand, regardless if there's a subject or not, the first 3 days is a cooling off period. I don't want for you to misunderstand that, thinking that I'm rescinding if I tell you immediately right afterwards.
Right.
So wouldn't the safer approach in that case would be to wait until the cooling off period is done and then tell you?
That's like slowing down the process, it's tying up your time as a buyer from finding a property that you can actually afford.
That's right? So I would say that, yeah, this is obviously sounds great to the buyer, but this also means that there's very little security for the seller. Right? And as we kind of go along with the podcast, you'll see that this is not just the only thing, right? So the second thing is what you said is, how can we rescind? Let's say that I want to rescind within the 3 days, right? So there's actually 3 ways for you to rescind. There's fax, register mail, and email. Okay? Now the key thing...
I'm sorry, fax is still a thing?
Yeah, it's on there. Who uses fax?
Yeah.
Right nowadays, right?
Yeah, no offense, if that's your primary method of communication, good for you. It's just not our preferred method of communication.
That's right. I think the last time I used fax was early 2000s. Oh man, anyways, I'm not gonna try to expose my age here, right? But coming back to it, the way you rescind is also to note, aside from these things, is also the time when it's valid.
Yeah.
The time that's valid about this rescission is not when you're the seller, when you receive it. When you receive this fax, when you receive this email, or when you receive this registered mail. It counts when I send it out. Yeah. So for example, if I want to send it out on the 3rd day at 5:55 p.m. just before the end of the day, that is still completely valid. You might not hear it until way past that point, but that doesn't really matter. All right. Let me just break it down how I can see how each individual ways can cause some issues. All right. Fax, we talked about it. Who uses fax today? Sorry, I'm just going to skip that for now. Because nowadays, a lot of fax can actually be transcribed directly to email. So let me just start off with email, all right? So with the email, one of the things is, well, someone has to email the seller. That means, does the seller need to provide the buyer with their own email, personal email now?
What is #privacy?
Not just that. There's all sorts of problems. As an agent, we're really scared because we're always kind of that middleman, right?
Yeah.
What happened if the buyer, I don't know, let's say 2 years down the road, something happened at the house. Hey, Mr. Seller, I got your email from a while ago. Hey, I just wanted to reach out because the roof is not... Do you, imagine as a seller, you receive that email 2 years later from a buyer, you're like...
Delete, block, not my problem.
Yeah, when is this gonna end, right? And that's why it was always important for us as agents as to be the middle person, right? Because honestly, sometimes the seller doesn't have time to deal with this stuff, right? So that's another thing that I can see that probably come with quite a bit of problem because like you said, privacy, right? The second thing a lot of people don't understand in the fine print is that if you send it by email, it must be an email service that can do read receipts. I already know there's several email services, free ones, that doesn't have read receipts. Then what? Are you gonna go register another email just to do this? I mean, some people might, right?
Yeah.
But once again, this just seems very interesting. I'm gonna put it that way, all right? Okay, let's say that email isn't your thing. When fax isn't your thing, let's just say you want to do registered mail. Now, the problem that lies with registered mail is the last thing that I said before I started talking about email is when I send it out, not when you receive it to count as valid, right? So registered mail obviously takes time. I'll give you a perfect example, right? Let's say it's the third day, right? Once again, it's 4:55 p.m. I don't talk to my agent anymore for some whatever reason. I go to the post office, send you a registered mail.
Yeah.
4:55 on the third day. As a seller's mind, the listing agent mind is, oh my God, the 3 days done. We're in the clear, woo!
100%.
Awesome.
Count the cash.
They start looking at what are the stuff that you want to buy, right? Happy, happy, happy. All of a sudden, with like the next day, you get a registered mail, the seller gets a registered mail saying, hey, you gotta sign this off. You open it, it's a notice of letter for rescission. Yeah, sucks. Excuse my language. What the hell, right?
Yeah.
You can see like how frustrating this can get for the seller's perspective of things, all right? And obviously, let's just say that that's obviously very extreme, all right? What happens if you just say that I talked to my buyer agent after I sent out this registered mail, some miscommunication happened, it never got past you the other side, then we're all of a sudden in this circle again, right? So, oh my God, I'm just trying to imagine some of our sellers, if this happened, they would probably lose it, honestly.
Understandably so. It's an extremely frustrating situation.
Exactly, right? Okay, let's now move on to the third thing. Let's say everything is all well, you can register mail, you have rescinded, right? The quarter of a percentage, we call it the break fee, right? Those are actually supposed to come directly from the deposit. Okay?
I see where this is going.
Let's talk about this, right? Okay, let's say that it's a subject-free offer, it's a multiple offer situation, the market is hot, okay? You came in with an offer with the deposit attached. Great. I'm the buying agent, I'll take that bank draft, I'll bring it to my brokerage. Remember, the deposit is in trust, right? Now you're really fundamentally changing how the brokerage handle their money, right? Because once again, if the buyer says they don't want it anymore, then they have to deduct it directly from the deposit, pass it to the seller, without the agreement of both the buyer and the seller. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just, once again, you're changing the fundamental way of how a brokerage is supposed to treat their funds. So that's the first thing I can see that's an issue, okay? And that's even the smaller issue. Let's talk about the second issue. Let's say there is subject, or it's a multiple offer situation, but the buyer didn't have time to go get a bank draft, right? And what happens is that they want the multiple offer, cold feet the next day, and then say they don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
But I don't have a bank draft. I'm a buyer agent, I don't have a bank draft on hand, right? So they decided to rescind, and they don't talk to me again as the buyer agent. Now, as a seller, you're still entitled to that quarter percentage of break fee, but you don't have it. I don't have a deposit. So guess what? You now need to chase after the buyer via small claim court to try to get this money back, right? Now, of course, $1 million is quarter is like $2,500. $500,000, you're just looking north of $1,000. Are you going to take the effort to go to the small claim court? Wait a year or two, provide all the evidence, and be like, I want my break fee. Hey, if your answer is yes, so be it, right? But a lot of people, they're just gonna be like, what?
I mean, every penny does count, but personally, I think it's not worth my trouble. I just probably would chalk it up as a loss, be mad about it for a week, and then life goes on.
Yeah, and then what I think this is what's gonna happen, especially in a hot market, is that especially in the multiple offer situation, deposit with the offer, it's almost gonna be a necessity if you wanna win an offer.
100%.
Right? Back then, when the market was hot, if you have a deposit on hand, it's a plus. But now, if you don't have a deposit on hand, it's now detrimental to your offer, right? Because the seller will feel extremely insecure You can always say, oh, I can give it to you the next day.
Yeah.
But come on, those are just words.
Of course. What do we say? Buyers are liars and sellers are too.
Right? Yeah, so those are some of the issues, literally just kind of breaking down that very simple 3 sentence that you said, breaking it down into fine print, and you can see all sorts of issues. Yeah. Right?
And I'm thinking about that deposit thing you just explained, you know, like, hey, we apologize to the banking industry in advance because the tellers are going to be slammed with the amount of deposits that they're going to have to be, like bank drafts they're going to have to prepare.
Yeah.
Were you just telling me a story the other week about like a pre-sale?
Yeah, so like a while ago I had a pre-sale thing, and then, you know, in order for, you know, secure your, I guess, spot into kind of be able to buy, you are scheduled to have to cut a bank draft. Just, you don't know, the developer doesn't take it, but they just want to see it, right? Yeah. I still remember the banker across the street came over, literally came. I was like, what are you guys doing? Why am I cutting bank drafts non-stop today?
Yeah.
To the same people with the same amount. Like, you know that this is putting a lot of extra stress on the tellers and stuff like that, right? It was 2 towers with like, I had like, I don't know, like I said, 1,000 homes in total. So you can imagine how crazy that get, right?
A headache and a half.
Yeah, there we go.
You know, the reason why I wanted you to share that story, Joe, is because, you know, when the government made this decision, they did not consult the real estate board.
That's right.
Any of them, or any of the realtors. And I know out of the 14,000 realtors out there, I'm sure a lot of us have some valuable input. We'd be more than happy to share. It's as if restaurant owner makes a decision that fundamentally changes how the restaurant operates, and expects the managers as well as all the servers and the wait staff to just execute without consulting them. And they're the ones that have to deal with the aftermath, and it directly affects all the customers that are coming into this restaurant. So you can see kind of where we're going here, that, like, you know, our personal thoughts and feelings are, hey, we agree the idea is great. It just maybe could have been executed a little bit differently.
I agree. Now, that's the next part is actually super interesting as well, because like different kind of product is also, you know, some are included into this, some are not included, right? It's because right now all we know is residential homes. But why don't we elaborate a little bit, like what's actually exempt, and then what are the other home types that we can see? Is like, is this part of it? Is this not part of it? Go ahead.
Yeah, you know, and this is what I was alluding to about the confusion in the beginning of the podcast. So why don't we start with number 1, leaseholds. Why are leaseholds not a part of this cooling off period? Like, you and I both know, like, many leaseholds operate basically as freeholds, especially when there's already a prepaid fee. That's right. So some neighborhoods that have leaseholds, they get treated very similar to freeholds, and these include, you know, properties that belong to SFU and UBC. Yeah. Properties in the West End.
That's right. There's some there.
Properties in False Creek.
Yep. There's some there.
Properties in Champlain Heights.
Definitely, there's some there too.
And in the east side of Vancouver.
Yeah.
Now, number 2, mixed-use buildings. So these include both residential and commercial.
So, like, for example, you're buying the whole building out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So what then? It's a mixed use, so it is residential, but it's also commercial. Like, are they included or are they not? I don't know. Number 3, okay, ALR land or farmlands.
That's
okay,
right.
so yes, there's a residential home structure on it. Yeah. But the surrounding land is mostly used for commercial purposes, for farming. Right. Now, number 4, single detached homes that are used for anything but living in. Yeah. Daycares come to mind. What about those? They're a business, but they're also a residential home.
Yeah.
Again, in air quotes.
Yeah. Oh man, the next one is so interesting. This is what tipped over for me. Like, I just don't understand this, but go ahead. Sorry to cut you off there.
Homes that are auctions.
Auctioned.
Again, auctions in air quotes. Yeah. What is considered an auction? Isn't our whole process of buying real estate right now a blind auction? I don't know what you're offering. You don't know what person C is offering. Person C doesn't know what person D is auctioning. That's blind bidding. And, you know,
that's blind auction.
Would this push more people to auctioning their home instead of putting it for sale and doing it the traditional way?
That's right, because then, you know, with auction homes, I'm not gonna get sidetracked, right? Because you can go on YouTube and you can check, you can just Google Australian real estate market, New Zealand real estate market when it was hot, because they function with, when multiple offer comes, they function with the auctions style, right? And a lot of them will say that this whole auction thing is actually not good for, you know, real estate prices and stuff like that, because things just get really, really, really personal, right? I can't speak for the overall market. I can speak for, I do have a really close friend that lives in Auckland, New Zealand, right? And he was buying the land, he was buying his house with his wife during this crazy market. And long story short, he overpaid, right? And he regrets it. But what his experience was telling me is that because you can see the agent, or because you can see the actual other buyer standing right in front of the house with you, he says that things got really personal. That you know how he looks, and you try to start putting all these weird things in your head, and then, you know, and then plus on top of that, every time you up the price, it's like 5,000 or 10,000. So like it feels like it's nothing, but then obviously at the end of the day, it's like, whoa, what did I just agree myself into?
Up. I mean, okay, for those of you who have been a part of a multiple offer situation or have heard about it from a friend, I'm sure we all have in the last 18 months. Those are already emotionally charged situations that can be stressful. How are you going to feel when, or if it goes into a business situation where someone's like, oh, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, like you were saying? Think about the emotional pressure it puts on all parties, like during that time.
That's right. That's right. But you know what? That's, maybe we can do that with another podcast. But I'm just saying that, you know, this whole auction thing is very, very interesting. Maybe me and you, we need to start practicing to become an auctioneer.
100%. You know, we put enough hats on already as realtors. We might as well just add auctioneer to another one, buy a hammer and a gavel, and sold.
That probably requires me to drink a little bit more coffee. Let's put it that way, right?
Probably. But anyway, the last thing about the type of property is that, you know, okay, we know that bare land is not included, but what about bare land strata?
That's right.
I think, again, it just requires a little bit more clarification on exactly how everything is going to go.
No, I agree. I agree.
And we didn't even touch on some miscellaneous items that I feel like would be good for people to know. I would say number one, do not treat the cooling off period as a subject. Now, the seller is not obligated to give you access to the property for an inspection just because of the cooling off period. So please make sure you still write it in as a subject. Now, devil's advocate, let's say we were working with a bad faith seller. Again, you're the buyer and I'm a seller. And you know, you have an accepted offer. I accept your offer. It's the second day. You want to come in for an inspection, and I say, I'm so sorry, Joe. My daughter, she's got COVID. We have to self-isolate for 5 days. Please contact us then.
That literally just make it really up period completely worthless, right? You can't go in for an inspection. You can't. I see where you're going with this.
Yep. Sorry. Too bad. So sad. Like, those are just some of the big questions that we still have about the upcoming rules. Why don't we end our overall thoughts about this?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I think, Joe, and between you and I, our first comment is that, you know, back in March, this was called the home buyer protection period, again, in air quotes. However, based on how this is written, our discussion today, it doesn't really feel to me as if this is protecting anyone.
True, especially with the last thing you said. That financing and inspection is not automatically built into this cooling off period if you don't write it in.
To me, we're just giving the buyer an out from completing on a contract, but ultimately that's not what the buyer wants. A buyer wants to buy a home, complete on it, get the keys, and move in.
That's right.
Like, if we had put those let's say regulations that you just mentioned, inspection, all those instead as a mandatory process, we think maybe that would be a better direction in protecting home buyers. That's right.
I completely agree. So with this new rule as it stands right now, I really feel like the only thing that will change is how multiple offer situation gets treated. I mean, like you said, the goal of this home buyer protection program is to make sure that all buyers have like equal playing fields, and you know, everybody has their time to do the due diligence and stuff like that. You know, so the buyer has time to understand what they're buying, right? But with the way that is set up, we still feel like the people with the deeper pocket is most likely still gonna win.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, so 2 examples, right? The people that has a deep pocket, they don't really care about the penalty, right? For example, I'm buying my kids a home, 1-bedroom condo, right? I'm like a multi-millionaire or even a billionaire, right? So of course we talked about now what this new rule as it states now is, you know, the biggest thing is if you want to submit multiple offers everywhere, you have to cut the bank draft for every single one in order to make your contract as strong as possible, right? But if I'm a multi-billionaire, What's stopping me? 40,000 here, 40,000 here, 40,000 here, 40,000 here, 40,000 here. I win this one, I win that one. Okay, I'll take the rest of the bank draft back. I don't want that one, I'll take this one. Yeah, don't worry about it, you can take whatever the fine it is. Right?
100%.
And I literally just held up, how many did I just say, 5 to 6?
Yeah.
I literally held up 5 to 6 units. Right? And then I literally get to pick which one I like at the end. I like, you're like, oh my God.
Well, I can imagine this scenario happening very clearly. You know, a father or a mother wants to buy a property for their kid. Their kid's on vacation, isn't back yet. They put 10 offers, all $1 million on a condo, wait for the daughter to come back, and then they pick one, and then whatever the one they don't want, okay, back on the market.
Yeah, because back then, like the way that we're with at least the last 2 years, they're still very careful because they understand that if they put a subject-free offer here and a subject-free offer there and there, and they actually score it, then they have to buy it.
Yeah.
Now these guys were like, well, I don't even have to buy it, right? It's like, oh, $1,000, you're gonna have $1,000, or you're gonna have $2,000. Chump change, right? So how is that helping anyone, right? And another example is, let's say I, once again, have a really deep pocket and I really want, let's say you're the seller, your home, right? What's stopping me to write another agreement between me and you that's not on the contract that says that, hey, if I rescind, you would be more than happy to just take my whole deposit.
The whole 5%.
Yeah, the whole 5%. I'll just give it to you as a penalty.
That automatically, as a seller, to me, would be the most attractive offer on the table.
At that point, I don't even need to give you the highest price. Especially if my competing people are like, no, I can't do that, right? You know, take my break fee, right? Well, as a seller, of course, I'm gonna move towards the person who's like, oh, the whole 5% deposit.
I would probably do everything in my power to ensure you rescind.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
So those are just kind of our thoughts about that. We can definitely keep going down this rabbit hole. There's so many approaches and ways for you to break this down, and it just gets more and more confusing.
Honestly, I just got this image in my head. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever played this game, but there's a bunch of slots on like a wooden panel, and you drop a ball at the front, and it has an option to pick through many different paths to get down there. It's like what's going on right now. There's so many different ways that we can explore this.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong, like, again, Joe and I, we think this is a good idea. The cooling off period, it can be beneficial for home buyers.
Yes.
And although we've explored like a lot of different reasons why it might not work as it is right now, it's still only August.
Yes.
There's 4 months left to the year until this is in effect in January.
Yeah.
We are hopeful that there will be some changes to be made.
It better, because personally, I think that if we roll it out just the way that is presented right now, the whole system is going to break down, right? So that's definitely not good. So, like you said, we definitely have some time. Really wish that the government bodies could at least listen to some of the, the council, the board, the agents, at least take our input and put it into consideration, because we're the people that's in and out of the real estate battlefield every single day, right?
Yeah.
Because right now it just seems like there's so many question marks. As you can tell throughout the whole podcast, like we just have question marks all over our head, right?
Yeah. This is a cartoon. We probably have them all over on top of our heads right now.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So hopefully the next time we talk about this, maybe around the Christmas holiday time, we're gonna have something more concrete. Right, so I think that will end our podcast for this week. So my name is Joe.
My name is Jeff.
And we are the Mike for Vancouver Real Estate. If you guys have any comments or opinions about how this whole thing should break down or how this whole thing should work, we would definitely love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.
Bye, guys.